Namaskara. A very happy Sharan Navaratri to all our viewers. Today is our third day. I start with this by paying our respects to Shri S.L. Bhairappa, who we have lost today. Just a word about him. A person who has built, created the most strong women characters in Kannada literature. He will stay on with us through this literature. Our pranams to him. With that, we start the program. The third Devi is Chandraghanta. Chandraghanta, as the name suggests, is because of the moon, the crescent moon that she uses as a bell, and she uses that as a weapon. The classic part about this Devi is she has weapons, she has 10 hands, sorry, and has weapons all over. She's known for her fearlessness and for being the warrior that she is. So today, for Chandraghanta, when we were looking for the queen, we were looking for the queens who were using, who had the capability to use different weapons in order to save themselves and save their kingdom, the motherland. Who else other than our very own Abbakka, Rani Abbakka from Karnataka. So, Tilottama, over to you to explain about Abbakka and also to speak about the local tales about Abbakka, apart from what we get here. Considering that you also come from the same region, so I'm sure you would have many other folk tales about Abbakka that would be there. So kindly speak about all of them. That'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Just 1 second. Okay. So thanks, Shama. I was just trying to get one of my dogs out of the way. She's also trying to talk. So, okay. So today is just like you said, it's the day of the goddess Chandraghanta. And Chandraghanta is my personal favorite as a mechanical engineer because she's called Chandraghanta, as you said, because her name means moon bell. And she's referred to as Moon Bell because she uses the crescent moon like a bell to kill her enemies with acoustic waves, which I think is just really cool. And of course, of all the Navadurgas, she is also the one with 10 hands, and each hand is carrying a weapon. So she's clearly, the engineer, the one who uses technology or who's into problem solving with slightly unusual ways. Okay, so now coming to Rani Abbakka. First of all, Rani Abbakka is either 2 or 3 people. So Abbakka Chowta. Chowta also means chief. So you can either call her Rani Abbakka or Abbakka Chowta. So yeah, so there are stories of Rani Abbakka right from something like 1540 all the way up to 1620 or so, 1628, some such number. So it's something like 80 plus years of stories of her. So she was obviously not one person. She was definitely 2 or more likely 3 people. So the first queen took on. So all these stories that that we talk about are of the queens battling the Portuguese. Before we get into the actual stories, I want to mention that the Portuguese in this time, the 16th and 17th centuries, 15th and 16th centuries, really, they were the main colonialists making a nuisance of themselves in the Indian Ocean and thereabouts. And when I say making a nuisance of themselves, what I mean is they were pirates. There's no other word for it. So what they used to do is that they would, we had a lot of trade, obviously, with both East Africa and West Asia. So what these people would do is that they would try and sink ships that were going from India to Africa or other parts of Asia, unless they paid them some huge amount of money. So that was their business, I mean, modus operandi rather. Now, they had captured Goa and made that their base, and based on that, they were doing all this. So some little countries which were in India, they said, okay, fine, we will pay you because it's not worth the trouble. But there were others like Abbakka Chowta, who is the queen of this place called Ulal, which is about 15-20 kilometers from Bangalore. So she said nothing doing. We are not going to pay you guys. And when I say she, I mean all these queens that we're talking about. So now the first queen, I'm not going to go into great detail about her, even though her story is also very cool. She basically, the Portuguese tried to take over Ulal because, they wanted control. And she, with something like 200 people, she took over Mangalore fort, chased down every single Portuguese fellow and cut their throats. Because, like with Rani Karnavati that we talked about on the first day, where she insisted they cut off their noses. The north, they were into cutting off noses. In the south, we were just directly going for the throat. So we were leaving nothing like prisoners of war, etc. I think only the Cholas had some tradition of prisoners of war, but most of the others were like nothing doing. And this is a policy which proved to be a good one, because I think one of our other queens got into trouble with the British because she decided to pardon them. And then they came right back and destroyed her. So Abbakka knew what she was doing there. Anyway, so now the main story that I want to talk about is either her granddaughter or her niece or one of those. So this entire coast of western coast of India, from Kerala all the way to Gujarat, pretty much everybody was matriarchal and not matrilineal. I'll come to that later, but they were all matriarchal. So basically the queens were in charge of defense. So the thing would go from mother to daughter or aunt to niece, whatever it is, the succession. So now this Abbakka that we're talking about, she was in all probability very young, maybe mid-20s, something like that, when she took over as queen. Either she was very young or she was one of the other ones, in which case she was very old, but one of the two. So she was at two extremes of her career. And so we'll assume she's very young for this story. So basically the Portuguese, they'd been trying for 80 and odd years to get a grip on things. So when they realized that this young queen has taken over, they said, this is a great opportunity to go after her and make an example of her. Now, this queen also, because, basically the thing was, she's not going to pay them for the privilege of going and doing the trading that we had been doing for thousands of years anyway. So she also makes a big, show of it and says, I don't care about you guys. I'm not scared of you, etc., etc. And just to prove my point, I'm going to be personally on the ship and I'm going to go to wherever it is that I'm trading, and I'm going to come back and I will make sure that you guys, can't get anywhere near the ship. So these people are thrilled to bits, the Portuguese. So they're like, this young woman who doesn't know what is going on, we are going to take her on. So they let her go. And when she's coming back, they basically have the entire Portuguese naval fleet that was available at that time standing there. So something like they had some 80 ships or some such things. That was the number that I read. So all of them were standing in a line. And the thing about the Western Ghats is that, or the west coast of India rather, is that the Western Ghats, which are mountains, they go directly into the sea. So there are many places where, you just see cliff, sea. There's nothing in between. So there are very few places where you can actually land a ship. So Mangalore is one, Mangalore port, and a little this way, that way. Then further down, you have to go like nearly 80 kilometers or so to Bekal. Or you further up, you go the other direction, another 100-150 kilometers to get to Karwar and those places. So there is nothing in between where you can land a ship. So therefore, they thought if they block this port, block access to this, her ship is stuck. They can't land anywhere. They have to, they can't go anywhere. But the point was that this was exactly what Abbakka had planned. Basically, she planned to ambush the entire Portuguese navy with one ship. And She in fact managed to destroy the entire Portuguese navy with one ship, and and this is how she did it. I'm going to show you. I'm going to try and share my screen. I hope it works. In case it doesn't, we will put a link to this particular photograph in the in the comment section later. But for now, let me see if it. So tell me if you can see my screen. Hopefully you can. Yeah. Okay. So this, if you see, this is what she used. So this thing is, you can see this in Tipu's summer palace in Bangalore. It is wrongly labeled. Sorry, it's called the flaming sword. It's wrongly labeled in that place as something that is meant to scare horses. This is not meant to scare horses. This is meant to set fire to ships. And the way it does it is you have, this part, the hilt, so-called. This is highly flammable. And the other part is made of metal. I mean, actually, there's metal throughout, but the other part is just a sword. It's like a sharp thing at the end of it. So what one did, or what we did as people from Karnataka, because this is widely used in Karnataka, is that this was shot out of a cannon, a specially designed cannon. We are very good at metallurgy in India. So this was shot out of a cannon. And, cannon basically uses gunpowder, right? And there's an explosion in the cannon. So that explosion sets fire to this part, the flammable hilt of the sword. So this thing had a range of something like 2 kilometers. And this is why you know that it was not meant to scare horses, because there's no point scaring horses 2 kilometers away. They have plenty of time to regroup. But this is obviously for setting fire to something big. So this would basically go with a range of 2 kilometers. This means you can stay 2 kilometers away from that ship, fire this, and let me stop share. Yeah, fire this, and two things can happen. Either this thing will go and fall on the ship. Ships, by the way, are highly inflammable, were highly inflammable. I mean, everything is either wood or canvas cloth, or there's some tar and whatnot in between to waterproof it. So basically, either it falls on the ship and sets fire, or even worse, the sharp point goes and wedges itself into some portion of the ship because it's, wood, and you can't pull it out because the hilt is on fire. So basically, using this amazing technology that we had in India, the Europeans didn't have, the colonialists didn't have, she set fire to all the Portuguese ships. Now, the thing is, ships don't necessarily immediately burn to the ground because water is right there, right? So it's readily available. So you can theoretically put out the fire when the thing is. But obviously, they did not want to do it anywhere near where all this confusion was happening, because, people can attack from the back, etc. And they're literally sitting ducks. So the Portuguese tried to flee. They tried to go, I don't know this part exactly because this is from stories. I don't know whether they went towards Bekal or whether they went towards Karwar. But she had basically made deals with the Queen of Bekal and the Queen of Karwar so that their navies were standing around blocking the path of the Portuguese. So if you look at the story of the Portuguese, read up the history, including in Wikipedia, which is heavily biased. By the way, I recommend you do not read Wikipedia for Rani Abbakka's story. It is a nightmare. But anyway, even Wikipedia talks about how the Portuguese were dominating the seas on the 15th and 16th centuries, and all of a sudden, they're gone. And the reason they're gone is because Abbakka finished them off. Of course, they will never ever admit it, that one woman with one ship finished the mighty Portuguese navy, but that is pretty much what happened. Okay, so that's the story of Rani Abbakka. And there's a whole lot of little points that I noticed when I did the research for this that I want to talk about. I don't know whether Shama, you tell me whether you want to say something in between, or shall I continue talking?
Just wanted one clarification in between, and that is, you said it could be two or three Ranis. So could you also speak about how you get that from local source, somewhere, some other source?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that briefly later. In fact, I forgot to mention that. Thanks for this thing. So the reason we know about this is because there was some account of some, I thought it was a Portuguese traveler, but somewhere else it says Italian traveler who came by something like 20 years after this battle, so 1640 something, to find this queen. Basically, he wanted to see this queen who had managed to destroy because in the process of destroying the navy, she also destroyed the economy, because that economy of that country was based off being pirates and whatnot. So he wanted to see who this queen is, and I'm going to show you his a little bit about his description of her. So just the timeline, just looking at the timeline, because we're talking about 80 years plus another 20 years, so about 100 years. So it cannot be one person for sure. Even two people is a bit of a stretch. So because in 1640 or whatever, she's supposed to have been about 40 years old, 40 plus. So therefore it must have been at least three generations or more. The reason for the confusion is because her stories are very popular in the Kannada dance form of Yakshagana. So they are always told in Yakshagana. And therefore, she's always referred to as Abbakka, and she's given slightly, Devi status there, obviously, because all of what they did was incredible. So there's a little bit of confusion on which part is exactly whose. Therefore, yeah. Okay. Something else, or shall I continue? Yeah. So I'm going to try sharing my screen again, because I wanted to show you that part written by this Portuguese traveler. Can you see my screen? No, sorry. Let me. Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to. This, by the way, was just to give you an idea of the kind of dense vegetation of those places. This is Karwar, but so it's actually one of the places where you can land a ship. But this is, where the mountains just go right into the sea, and it's pretty difficult to do anything. Okay, so I just want to talk about this account of the queen. So I find this hilarious, so that's precisely why I wanted to talk about it. So one is, he says, there's a long account, and he says her complexion was as black as that of a natural Ethiopian. She was corpulent and gross, particularly in regard to her person below the waist, etc., 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 but not heavy. So she was corpulent and gross, but not heavy, for she seemed to walk nimbly enough. Her age may be about 40 years, although the Portuguese had described her to me as much older. So the Portuguese also, in the Portuguese head also, she was this kind of supernatural being, because, they got into trouble with her so often. Like the first time round, first and second time round, every single Portuguese who was there got, like, no, she's supposed to have some vice admirals, etc. She's supposed to have chased them down. That is, must be her granny. Her grandmother chased them down and killed them. It was not, she didn't let them go even when they ran away, which is actually unusual, because Indian tradition is typically, if somebody runs away from the battlefield, you let them go. But here she was like nothing doing. You guys are going to be finished. And then later on, she did this to their ship, so they were scared. Okay, so the other thing, a lot of it is the same. So she was girded at the waist with a plain piece of thick white cloth and barefoot. From the waist upwards, the queen was naked. And this is kind of normal, because, that place is like tropics, right? So it is hot and humid. So this is the normal attire. In brief, her aspect and habit represented a rather dirty kitchen wench, because now this European is having difficulties dealing with this, right? Then a delicate and noble queen. Whereupon I said within myself, behold, by whom are routed in India the armies of the king of Spain. I guess this guy is confused, which in Europe is so great a matter. I mean, of course, king of Spain, because by then I think Spain and Portuguese had sort of jointly started whatever. But the point is that this guy can't believe that this supernatural queen, whatever queen that he heard of, and had, in his head was this incredibly scary person, that she was just walking around barefoot not bothering about how she looked or what anybody else thought of her. And she's just normal, like, perfectly regular person. So he couldn't deal with that. And this is in fact something that I wanted to just highlight a little bit of. It's in keeping with what we've already been talking about the last two times, about this colonial patriarchal gaze that we are unfortunately trained from our school onwards to sort of always have that outlook. So these are few things I came across when I was doing the research. One is somebody's talking about the Portuguese and they said superior naval technology. Now, the Portuguese did not have superior naval technology. Right now, Lothal is in the news. Lothal, in something like at least 3,000 years ago, or at least more than that likely, had a dry dock. Dry docks are meant for repairing ships. So if there was a dry dock, then there were obviously ships. And if there were ships, then we were obviously trading with somebody else, right? Because otherwise, what do you do with the ship? So we are the ones who had superior naval technology. And in fact, our naval technology was superior even in the previous century, 1900 something, we were still the leading shipbuilders in the world. So it's us, not them. Second, somebody's talking about Ulal and they're talking about the Queen. They're talking about this naval battle and they say rudimentary and primitive weapons. These are not rudimentary and primitive weapons. These are in fact the first known missiles that humans have used. Right? They're the opposite of rudimentary and primitive. Of course, the person who was talking about it was misinformed because he thought it had something to do with coconuts in it. But I just want to point out that, you can't fire coconuts from a cannon. It needs to be metal because otherwise it will just burst into pieces. Okay. But this is just the way we are trained to think. That's why I want to point this out. Okay. The other thing is they're talking about the Queen and they say she was taught horse riding. In fact, they said she was taught horse riding by her uncle. No, I reject that because you can't ride a horse in that place. It's dense rainforest. The horse will kind of trip and fall and break its leg within 2 minutes. So there is no question of riding horses. Whatever happened, all of this was mostly done on foot, barefoot, chasing people, killing people. All of this happened on foot for the most part. Of course, the sea battle happened in the sea, which is where our strength was. The other thing they said is Queen inherited whatever from her uncle. No, she inherited from either her aunt or mother or sister because it's a matriarchal system. Same thing, matrilineal, not matriarchal. That's what people always try to say. No, in fact, I reject the idea that many of these places were matrilineal but not matriarchal, because not just in humans, even in other animals, whoever controls the territory is expected to defend it. So if you have a system where the women are controlling the territory, then naturally they are the ones who are going to defend it. So it was definitely matriarchal. That meant that the women are the ones who are in control of the place. Same thing, whenever they talk about her, they say the men in her army. This is just standard, we say it like automatically without even thinking. But the point is that these armies would have been minimum 50% women. Okay, the other part was, again, with Abbakka Senior, there is this theory that she was captured or killed. No great evidence to prove it. It's just said. Because again, like we said, in our heads, it has to be that eventually the colonialists win. Even though there's no evidence, we just automatically just put it there. There's no reason why we should. And in fact, here it was the colonials who were killed, not the people from there. And the last thing that I wanted to tell, because this is my favorite story, so I tell people this story very often, whether they want to hear it or not. So one of the things that happens is I tell this story, everybody's listening, they're not exactly believing you. And then you say this Portuguese traveler or Italian traveler or British guy said X, whatever, something. And suddenly you can see all the people relax. Suddenly all the people believe you. Right? And this is something that we really need to get out of, this theory, because why is some random guy who came from some part of Europe, why is what he says more valid than stories from our own people who have been in the same place, right? This is something that we really need to think about, that there are these stories which continue. Of course, the stories might have some exaggerations. Of course, when I tell you this, everything I say may not be the truth. That doesn't matter. The point is that everything that this European person said also is not the truth. So why do we tend to believe them over us? There's no reason to do that. We should stop doing that. We should start believing in ourselves and start thinking of how amazing some of our ancestors have been. And we're going to get back to this, I think, tomorrow when we talk about Queen Shantala, where Shama is going to be talking about the more regular stories about Queen Shantala that we pick up from that you get from doing some research on the internet. And so Queen Shantala she's not exactly my ancestor, but my ancestors came from a similar place. So, and I'm going to tell you stories that I heard growing up as a child about her. So we're going to give you both versions. As always, the interpretation of it, what you take away from it, that's all up to you. It should not be what somebody else tells you to think. It should be what you think. So yeah, with that very long lecture, thank you very much.
Thank you. 9 minutes with Navadurga has not been 9 minutes anymore. I'm sure it's been much, much longer than what, but it's still worth it. I mean, worth it to recollect our queens, worth it to understand our legacy, worth it to understand the fact that this is the white shoulders on whom we are standing, and understand our responsibility. With this, we'll meet you again tomorrow. For Kushmanda, the creator, and Tilu has already said, so we'll be speaking about Shantala. Namaskaram. Thank you.
Thank you.